This is the Merri-Cast, the show that puts you on the fast track to business confidence. My guest this week is Lucy McCarraher. Where do I begin with Lucy? Author, speaker, book mentor, publisher, founder of Rethink Press, and one of the driving forces behind the brilliant Business Book Awards. As a judge on these awards in recent years, I've marvelled at her knowledge, insight, and general get up and go. I've wanted to sit down with her and chat for a while, and when we spoke recently, as you will hear, her energy just fizzes across the airwaves. We pick up her story with a long journey, as a younger Lucy and her new husband take a daring trip down under.
My first sort of proper, well, it wasn't even a job. I've honestly never had a job. I've always been, I suppose, an entrepreneur. But I never used that word about myself until comparatively recently. But what happened was that when I got married while I was still at university, far too young. But my husband got a job in Australia, lecturing at a university there. And we were both really, really into theatre and the performing arts at the time. And we went out there completely sort of blind, if you like. I mean, really didn't kind of do stuff like, research what was going on there or anything. But what we did find when we got there was an amazing theatre and performing arts scene. And my husband, who was kind of like a real workaholic, decided that as well as having a new job, we should start a monthly theatre magazine with no money, no backup, and, two kind of English people, two Poms who just arrived in Australia and decided that Australian theatre was so wonderful that they would promote it by running this magazine. So somehow or another, and it's quite hard to remember how it actually happened, those were the days when you could get arts funding, and we managed to get funding for this completely uncommercial magazine because Australia is a huge country but with a tiny population, so distributing, there was obviously no internet in those days. It was a physical paper magazine. We brought out this monthly magazine covering theatre in the whole of Australia. It didn't make money from sale. I mean, it made a bit, but, it didn't cover its cost from sales. We did sell advertising, but essentially it was the most extraordinary introduction to publishing, in retrospect. And we just worked the whole time. We just worked, till 2:00 in the morning every night. Sometimes we'd be editing copy. Sometimes we'd be traveling and reviewing theatre. Sometimes we'd be stuffing envelopes to send out subscribers copies. And we managed to run this magazine for 8 years, which has actually never been done in Australia before or since. But towards the end of that, what actually happened was things started tightening up financially in terms of arts funding, and our funding started to close down, and we thought it's not possible to do anymore. And also we were then kind of at the point that we were going to return to the UK. So that was my first career move, if you like.
Did you regard that as a business venture, or was it just something you just thought, God, we love this so much, and it was like you're working into the small hours, things like that? Or was it just a labour of love in your mind, or were you thinking, actually, this is a sustainable, decent business that we're building here?
It was a labour of love to begin with, but it was in fact my job. I mean, I did, that was what I did. My husband was paid as a lecturer, but I was paid as the editor of this magazine. So I don't think we saw it as a business in the sense that, I mean, we had to obviously make the books balance and do but we didn't see it as profit making. I don't think that wasn't, we just wanted it to cover costs and, to pay the people who had to be paid. I don't think I didn't have that, I suppose, that entrepreneurial mindset at that stage where, you're actually going to grow a business and make money from it. Yeah, it just, that really wasn't, I think, in my head at the time.
But nevertheless, that was the first you with your publishing hat on,
yes.
in some way. So did you you hung on to that sort of flame, if you like, even when the when you said as the funding sort of started to dry up and so on. Did you then come back over here at that
Yes,
point, or
we
did something
did
else happen
come
in
back.
between? Yeah.
Yes, no, that's right. We did come back to England, and then we did another mad thing, which was to start up a video and TV production company, which was entirely, that was very business focused. Again, it began as an inspirational thing. We had small children at that stage, and we wanted to make what was it then called a video book about parenting, and videos as popular education, if you like, weren't really around at that point. So this was it was very cutting edge. And so we did that. We managed to get some investment. And then we started making videos, actually with people who are still quite famous, like Prue Leith on cooking, Alan Titchmarsh on gardening. We did a whole home decorating DIY video, which was funded by Laura Ashley at the time. And so we did do so. I mean, obviously, clunky old videos don't need to exist anymore then. But at that point, you had to go into the shops and you had to go to WH Smith or Woolworths and actually buy videos. And it really did start a trend. And actually, the most successful and profitable one we made was a series called The Lover's Guide.
All right.
Which was educational, sex education videos, but very explicit. And they were the first videos that actually showed pretty explicit sex that got British Board of Film classifications, as opposed to just being X-rated and So they were also on sale in places like WH Smith and Virgin Records and all those sorts of places. So there was a lot of publicity about that, but it was very profitable.
Okay, let me just pick on a few things there, because you're saying that you started this video company, and then you're mentioning it was available in WH Smith and so on. Now, these aren't things you accidentally fall into, So in terms of, for a lot of people would have sort of in their minds be thinking, but I don't know anything about making videos, or they would think, I don't know anything about distribution networks and so on. I mean, what was it that made you just carry on doing those things, or getting people in to help you do those things? I mean, when you could have just said, I don't know, actually, I don't really know anything about those things. What was there something in you you and your husband that made you think, well, what the hell, let's give it a go?
I think that's pretty much what it was. I mean, I as you can sort of already see, I've had a very unplanned career, if you can even call it that. And it's been a question of sort of having ideas and then just deciding to make them work one way or another, and learning as you go. And if you don't know it, well, then you learn it. And one of the things was that we had both been on television while we were in Australia, kind of around our performing arts and theatre expertise. We had both hosted TV programs on the arts. So we had kind of, some knowledge of video television production. And we also made TV programs as well as these videos while we were doing this, in this new company. So the idea of not knowing how to do something has never really stopped me from thinking, oh, well, let's give this a go. We'll see what happens. Yeah,
there's a danger in a lot of people that they overthink things and talk themselves out of doing things rather than do them. Yeah. But that doesn't sound like that was a problem in your case.
No. I mean, it might be a problem the other way in thinking, oh, well, I can do this when I actually know nothing about it whatsoever. And, things go wrong that way. But in general, there's always somebody to teach you. There's always somebody to partner with. There's always, a way of learning things, I think, if you don't worry too much about it.
Okay, so let's get on to Rethink. So how did that come out of the video business, or was it something completely separate? Or
no, it was. I mean, among other things that I'd done, I'd also worked for publishers on a freelance basis, both in Australia and the UK, and I had always wanted to be a writer. I mean, that was my kind of childhood sort of thing. So for example, when we were doing the television work, I wrote a lot of scripts at that point. But I always wanted to actually write novels. So I'd had one book published before Rethink. No, I know probably more than that, but I had written a book on work-life balance because that was another kind of area I fell into. But Rethink came up because I had written a self-help book that was published by a small publishing company owned by a man called Joe Gregory. And I didn't even realize when he took on my book that he lived kind of half an hour's drive from me. We in fact met at a networking meeting, and it just turned out that he was his previous business partner had left. I was kind of looking for the next thing, and so I sort of proposed that I come and work with him as his commissioning editor. He was working with publishing the books of entrepreneurs and experts and business leaders at that point, but on the kind of traditional publishing model. So the publisher invests in the book and has to make their return on their investment from sales of books. But I could see that the authors he was working with were not necessarily interested in making lots of sales of their books. What they wanted to do was use their books to build their business.
Interesting.
And
right.
A lot of that would be about giving away books and, not kind of necessarily getting into, bookstores. I mean, obviously Amazon had come along not long before that and changed things as well. So I suggested that we start a new imprint, and which we called Rethink, and actually charge authors for publishing their books, because we were not going to be able to make the money back on sales. They didn't particularly want to help us do that. And they were actually they were the owners of small businesses that had a marketing budget, and they were using their book basically to market and promote their business. So we started Rethink sort of side by side with Joe's other company. And we didn't know if it would work. We didn't know if there would be a market for it, whether people would be happy to come and pay for the publishing production services. But we literally started with just the two of us. Joe would do all the design and covers and the publishing end of things, the technical end of things. And I would do all the editing and the kind of words bit. And we found that, we started off publishing one or two books, and then the second year we had, I don't know, half a dozen books published. And then suddenly it took off. And we decided that was the way to go. And Joe's other business, was subsumed into Rethink. And we have not looked back since then. So that's how Rethink started.
Did you find that a difficult sell to start with, though? Did you get people saying, well, hang on, you're charging us to write the book? I thought I was getting in advance. Was there a tension
yes,
at the moment?
There were people who thought that would, who questioned that. But gradually, it just seemed to become normalized in the entrepreneur world very quickly. And there were other people doing it. It wasn't like, we had invented this idea of what is now called hybrid publishing out of nowhere. There were other people doing it. But we also had the very good fortune to meet Daniel Priestley and to become part of the Key Person of Influence program. And he has always been a massive advocate of entrepreneurs. I mean, the Key Person of Influence program has 5 Ps. So it's pitch, publish, product, partnership, and profile. And publish was always about getting a book published. When you were on that accelerator program, you got a book published. So we met up, and I became the publish mentor for the Key Person of Influence program. And so inevitably, those entrepreneurs, having worked with me and with Joe, of course, as well, to get their books written, then came to us to get their books published. So it was a very kind of lucky or synergistic meeting of two businesses that worked very well together, and had the same idea in mind of a book being a really important asset for a business leader, for an entrepreneur.
Okay, so at what point in time are we then when Rethink kind of emerged in that way? Are we sort of, how long ago are we talking
So
about?
I started working with Joe in 2010. In 2011, we started Rethink as just a bit of an idea. And by 2013, we were working with the Key Person of Influence program.
Okay. And is for you and Joe as sort of entrepreneurs that, sort of building that business, I mean, have you been through moments where, in terms of your skills as an entrepreneur, have you been tested in certain areas, where you thought, well, actually, I'm not very good at this? And what would those things be?
So, I mean, as I say, we started off I was doing all the copy editing of the books, which, I was reasonably good at, but I'm not actually a trained, I've done copy editing and going back to Theatre Australia magazine, I did all the copy editing of that, but we got to stages every so often where we needed to there was just too much work to do. And then we would need to bring in some more people, always on a freelance basis, but, gradually they would become part of the process. And then, each time we did this, we'd think, oh God, they're actually much better at it than we are. Let's, Joe is a great cover designer, but, we also found other people who had different kind of skills and visions for cover design. And, then eventually we needed people we also started running and this is where we differ from every other, I think, hybrid or traditional publishing company, is that we have a coaching arm. We don't just publish books. We also do writing coaching for our authors. So we have a team of coaches, and I know other publishers do coach their authors, but we've actually got a team that's sort of, so we've got two sides. So we've got the coaching side and the publishing side. And so we then needed to bring in people to run each of those aspects of it so that we could take the higher view and be more, sort of actors. We've never called ourselves CEOs. We both call ourselves founders because we still cover I suppose there's some ways in which we cover very much the kind of the overview and the top level and the inspirational kind of part of where we're going and what we're doing. But we're also very hands-on in certain areas where we really do. I love doing mentoring. I don't do one-to-one coaching, but I love mentoring groups through writing their books. And that's one of my favorite sort of parts of Rethink. And I don't ever want to give that up.
Right. This is my next question then, is that has there been a bit of the business as it's been growing and developing? You mentioned about, well, I was okay at copy editing, but there were people better than me, and Joe was good at the design things. Is there a bit of the business where you were just kind of almost like gave that bit up through gritted teeth because you thought, no, I love doing that. I know I've got to let it go, but I so want to do it.
Yes, I suppose. The mentoring, we did bring in other people to work with, and I kind of wanted to do it all and be the mentor. And I still do it, though perhaps not so much as I used to. And I suppose I haven't given it up. I've kind of clung on to it and kept it. And I suppose Joe's particular forte actually is marketing. So he is very good at helping authors to actually use their books to promote their business. And that's what he's also got a particular skill of getting titles and subtitles right, which he's kind of hung on to. And it's a very niche little part of what we do for authors. But, he's hung on to that, I suppose.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because in my experience, so I used to edit magazines and so on. And the bit of the journalism thing that I always still cling on to a bit too much is coming up with the title, the headline, or the subtitle. Yeah, because in my mind, we used to run these 10-minute meetings where we all stood up and tried to think of a headline, and if we hadn't cracked it in 10 minutes, then so it's almost like a clock sort of ticking, which sort of helps. And I always loved the pressure of trying to think of something and so on. But we all have those little bits, which is my fascination with that particular question. I want to get on to how Rethink Press then moves on to the idea behind the Business Book Awards and how that came about. Was there something you just thought, we need some awards in this industry? Was it as simple as that, or was there something else? I mean, from my position as somebody who's been coming in as a judge the last 3 or 4 years, I'm blown away by the commitment to diversity and inclusion. We talk a lot about that, in terms of judging, and that sort of is almost like through it like a stick of rock. Sort of it seems to be there. Was Absolutely. That the original motivation, though? Was it just a simple motivation?
No, it wasn't. And in fact, it didn't. I mean, we did used to talk, Joe and I at Rethink Press about awards for business books. But because we were Rethink Press, we either had to sort of give awards to our own authors, or, that was very difficult to kind of find a way of sort of splitting off from that. So we would be objective. And then what happened? So we continued to kind of mull this over, but then we came into contact with ThinkFest. So, Kasim and Brad, who run the awards, and they said that they were interested in doing this. And so the awards are not actually linked to Rethink Press. The link is simply me, because otherwise it would be invidious. Yeah. Because obviously our authors will, they submit books into the awards, they enter their books, and I have nothing to do with the judging. No. And so that's, there is a very much a kind of glass wall, stone wall, what's the phrase, between
I know what you mean. Yeah.
between Rethink Press and the Business Book Awards. Yeah. So it was started with, I suppose, me and the ThinkFest team in 2017, with just a view, really, again, that it was a good thing to do, that we really wanted to celebrate these. And obviously there was a sort of, there's a business idea behind it, but that wasn't really the most important thing. And actually, we really didn't know with the first awards whether we would get entries, whether publishers would come on board, whether anybody was interested. So it was quite a sort of scary thing to open them at the end of 2017. And, we had 9 categories possibly. And, we were just hoping we got enough entries in each category to make a reasonable be able to give a reasonable assessment of the winners. We had 20 judges then. One thing that was absolutely fixed is we always had equal numbers of men and women judges. But what happened with those awards, and we got 150 entries. Most of the kind of business book publishers did enter books. So that was wonderful. And we were very happy with that. But what happened was that the 11 winners of that, it was 2018, they were brilliant. They were wonderful books, fantastic authors, and every single one was a white man.
Right.
So nothing against white men, obviously, but that didn't feel right. And I suppose my feeling was then that either we try and tidy this up in a quiet way and find a better way, or actually we would go out all guns blazing and say, this is not going to happen again. Yeah. We're going to really change things. And this is an essential thing that needs to happen. So that's what we did.
So year after year, I'm sort of sitting there, sort of listening to how many female entries, how many male entries, other stats around diversity and stuff, and it's all kind of pointing in the right direction, and so on. Are there future goals for, the Business Book Awards where you feel there are certain things you haven't quite cracked yet, in terms of development of that as a business?
It's an interesting one, because actually last year, or in fact this year, 2023, there were quite considerably more male winners than female winners. Yeah. And, we got a bit of flack for that. And certainly when, you look at the photos of the, all the winners on stage, there are a lot of people in dinner jackets and not so many people in dresses. As it happened, the year before that, we'd actually had more women winners, but nobody got cross with us for that, yes, or even really mentioned it, except. So I still think there is some work to do around that, and also just generally, more inclusive. We have had the year before that we had a co-authored book by 2 Asian guys, which was absolutely great. But I think there's more work to do around getting more diverse business people to write their books, because I think there is a feeling, however deeply hidden it might be, is for certain groups of people to feel, well, writing a book's not for me. It's either too difficult, or I won't get published, or whatever. So again, I think there's more opening up to be done.
I want to get on to things that we could maybe sort of tell our listeners in terms of your perspective on what gave you the confidence you needed to succeed based on your learnings and experience. I mean, if you were giving advice, we talk about mentoring, you'd be mentoring in terms of books and development, but in terms of entrepreneurial journeys, I mean, are there certain things that, you can either say, I wish I'd known now what I knew then, or you could just say, the thing I would say to somebody who was just starting out on their entrepreneurial journey is this: does anything sort of spring to mind? Or I mean, your journey seems to be quite instinctive in some way.
Yes, it is totally. I mean, I can't pretend I had any kind of, goals or plans or, kind of career structure in mind at all. And I have gone from things that have inspired me to the next thing, really. And that probably doesn't work for everybody, but I do think there's something about, if you're doing what you love, I know it's a cliche, but then, you're not working. It's enjoyable. I think there's a quote from Oscar Wilde, I think, about work being more fun than fun. And I kind of tend to feel that because I really like the people that I work with. So, it's always interesting. And so I would say, if you possibly can, do what you really like. I mean, some people really just like making money, and that's fine. So that goes above the specifics of what they're actually doing. As long as they're making money, they're interested and engaged and happy, and that's great. But for me, I just need to be inspired by what I do. And also there's a feeling of, I think, and it's a thread, if I can sort of, I think everybody has a thread that runs through their lives. And if mine is anything, it's about being able to give some kind of voice or platform to people who haven't got it at the time, opening up ways of doing that. But also, I would say partnerships are absolutely vital. And if you're open to kind of getting a business or an idea off the ground, you probably can't do it on your own. And it's really important to find the people around you who will fill in your gaps, if you like. Because, for instance, me finding and working with Joe was perfect, because he's very good at some things and not so good at others, and vice versa. But, we really have a good partnership in that way, because we are, almost complete opposites in many ways, but we work very well together.
That's a really interesting point. I mean, do you think that's just something that's easier because of the industry that you're in, where there's a lot of, thoughtful people who are probably naturally conducive to having collaborations and partnerships? I mean, is it perhaps not so relevant in other industries, or do you think that's just something that is ubiquitous?
That's a really interesting question. I suppose some other industries are much more competitive internally, if you know what I mean. I suppose if you're in, a big company, or where there's a career structure and a hierarchy, then it's harder to find partners because you're always competing with other people. While I've always found people to work with rather than compete against. I mean, obviously we all have competitors outside of the businesses, but I've also found, and actually the Business Book Awards has been a really nice way to be able to do that. That, other publishers, other authors, other book coaches have been able to bring into the Business Book Awards as judges, for example. Yeah. And that has been a really nice way. We know we're competitors. Of course we do in many areas, but we're working on something together. And there's just something that makes it warmer and more enjoyable, I suppose.
And for somebody, so I've sort of come in from the world of words, content, thought leadership, but I'm not in a publishing company. So and when I come into that environment as a judge, that's one thing that really strikes me, is that these are people who I guess they're competitors in that sense, but I just don't get that sense. I get the sense that the love of the book is like above everything, and so the conversations and the friendships that I've made, as a judge has been a major, sort of thing for me. Something I didn't expect at all. I thought I'd just be going in judging a bunch of books and going home again, and it wasn't like that at all. It was actually it was like a whole experience, if you like, which kind of stayed with me through the rest of the year as well, in terms of I was doing. So what are you up to now in terms of, Rethink or more developments in the Business Book Awards? So is this something that you guys are working on, that you are able or want to talk about, that you're particularly excited about? I'm always interested in the what next.
Yes, no, absolutely. There is something else that's outside Rethink Press. It's outside the Business Book Awards, but it builds on both, I suppose, in a way. But no, we are starting it's Joe and me and people at Dent, Daniel Priestley. We're developing an app for business book writing. Ooh. And it's called bookmagic.ai, and we are literally just opening it up for angel investment at the moment. We are road testing the technology. It's not, I always feel the need to say this, it is not a sort of the app where you go, okay, ChatGPT, write my book for me. It's not that at all. What it is taking the processes that we've worked on, and it is predominantly the mentoring that I do and the marketing that Joe does. So it's sort of everything except the publishing, and gamifying it so that it becomes as easy as it possibly can be to write a business book with the help of AI. For example, AI is really very good at chucking out some titles and subtitles if you give it the right information, and creating things like writing habits prompts, helping people to schedule their writing so they actually get it done. And obviously, it's on your phone, but also on your computer or whatever else, laptop, whatever you're working on. So, you really can take it round with you and get your book written wherever you can. So everything that we've done over the last 12 years in creating a process for people to position, then plan, then write their books, that's going into this app. So that's the next thing.
I'm really interested in that because if you were asking your average man or woman on the street about industries that might have, quotes, something to fear from AI, you might think that sort of book publishing might be something that will be, but you seem to have taken an opposite approach there, that actually it's a tool, it's something to help augment or accelerate the process in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are downsides to AI, and there will be certain people and certain roles who, I think, certain level of copy editing, proofreading, there are areas of publishing work that people will lose out on in terms of jobs for AI. I mean, I think there's always a place for an excellent copy editor who works with an author, and, likewise proofreading, but there's a lot of stuff that AI can do very well. And one-to-one coaching, I mean, we will be, including that as options within the app as well, being able to talk to a real person. But overall, I think that it is helpful to people, and that, it will make, I suppose what I'm trying to open up here is that it's, reading business books and educating people through business, being educated as a business leader has become massively easier through the books the multiplicity of books that are now published, but actually sharing your knowledge through being able to write your own book has been harder. Some people are good at writing and find it easy, but for most entrepreneurs, founders, coaches, consultants, they're not professional writers. And they need help, and it's expensive, to get coaching and mentoring and ghostwriting. Yeah. So this is a way, really, again, of opening that option up to just a lot more people. And, for me, the diversity that and equality that brings into place as well is going to be exciting.
Wow, what a journey Lucy took me on there. One thing that comes across with her is what she calls her very unplanned career. And the idea of not knowing how to actually do something never seemed to deter her. There's always someone there to teach you, she said. And that's a phrase that sticks with me now, even a few weeks after the interview. I was also struck by how she has helped people to use books as a way to build their businesses, and the inspiration that she herself derives from giving a voice to others. And then there's the importance of partnerships. It's very hard to do it on your own, she said. So many insights, and so thank you so much to you, Lucy. And thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate and review through your usual podcast provider. And if you want to find out more about the Merri-Cast or our business Merriborn Media, you can find us on LinkedIn. Don't forget to join us for our next episode. But until then, thanks for listening.